All right, so this is a benchmark that we've run with pretty much every single drone that's come out within the past couple of years, a full ActiveTrack flight. So in this video, we're gonna be testing the brand new Air 3 from DJI throughout this neighborhood and then on the golf course while I ride my one wheel. So why don't we get things started? We'll drag a box over us, go ahead and press on ActiveTrack, go, and now the drone is flying all by itself. So as we ride around, we'll talk a little bit about ActiveTrack on this drone, what's new and maybe what's not so new, because this is coming out after the Mavic 3, and this really takes a lot of the technology that's in the Mavic 3 and puts it into a smaller, more affordable drone. Now this course that we're running here, as you guys might know, isn't the most difficult for the drone to follow. I think that it's fairly average, right? We have a lot of open area in which the drone is able to just freely follow us, but there's areas like this right in the beginning that tend to be a little bit more challenging for the drone. So we've got some trees, we've got some signs, we've got things that you might encounter on an everyday ActiveTrack flight. Now, just to keep in mind, the Air 3 has an upgraded suite of obstacle avoidance sensors. So it has these larger fisheye cameras that first came on the Mavic 3. We've got it hanging up just a little bit there. It's being cautious, but it's able to come and catch up to us fairly quickly. So we've got these wider angle fisheye cameras on the Air 3. Excuse me if I call it the Mavic Air 3, just because it's going to be a force of habit, but those wider angle cameras will give it the ability to see obstacles a lot better. Now with ActiveTrack 5.0 here on the Air 3, that's coming down from the Mavic 3 Pro, the Mavic 3, Mavic 3 Cine, that line of drones. You'll notice we can tap on the person icon on the screen and say, put it over to the left of us. So now the drone is going to track us from the left side. At least it's going to try to catch up. Oh, it's getting real close. That got real close. Now let's go ahead and we'll go and flip it over to the right side. The reason being is because we of course have these trees here. So what's the drone gonna do? It seems to be wanting to fly straight forwards. Makes an all right move. There are a bunch of trees there, so hopefully it doesn't just keep flying back and crash. Okay, nice. Dodged around the trees. It should recognize to pick us up from the right side over here. I will say that in one of my flights, I had the Skydio 2 just completely wreck into the trees right there. So that was a great little maneuver from the Air 3. Now, this is the area where I'm always most concerned about the drone and its tracking, primarily because we've got two trees and some water. And, you know, if the drone ends up crashing and going in the water, wouldn't be a good thing. I will say really quickly, just a note about the Air 3 in general, it has like this raspy tone to it, which is kind of weird. So let's see. You know what? I feel like I freak out over nothing when coming over that bridge. Did a good job at tracking me. Let's go ahead and let's put it back over to our right side. See, that's what's great about being able to change on the fly is, you know, being able to kind of understand your surroundings and put the drone in an area where you know it's going to do a good job at tracking you. So like in that case back there, I didn't want it to fly directly to the right because there were trees there. Let's see what it does here though, right? We've got it tracking off to the right side. We have a tree here, so it should make the maneuver to go around, which it did. So it's still actually kind of just straight up tracking me from behind, but did a pretty good job at getting around that obstacle. Now, as I mentioned, this does have those upgraded sensors, right? So the wide angle fisheye cameras, we'll call them. They're higher resolution camera. That got really close. Higher resolution camera with a wider angle field of view. We've got them on the front and the bottom as well as underneath of the drone. And these cameras are supposed to also be able to see upwards. So this drone does have upwards obstacle avoidance. Now, the Mavic 3 series has an extra set of sensors just on the top. They're a different looking sensor, if you will. It's the old style obstacle avoidance sensor. So while this drone is still going to do a really good job at dodging and avoiding obstacles, the Mavic 3 is technically going to be a little bit better just because of those extra sensors. Now we've got a tree directly to the right. The drone is gonna fly super close, come back and around, and should pick us up on the right side again, hopefully. Now I will say that we've pretty much aced this test, if you will, with almost every single drone. Even the Mini 3 Pro with just the forward sensors and those backward sensors that are much smaller than the Air 3 did a great job. Now I noticed that the drone is flying very low to the ground to get around obstacles. And even in this scenario where there's a pretty challenging background here, it's able to understand that I'm the subject. I mean, I've got a gray sweatshirt with the gray black top, so that's pretty impressive. Let's go ahead and set it to follow us from behind again. I'm going to be making a left here. does a good job at keeping up, right? I mean, there's a sign right there. All right, so I don't know if the sign was even in the frame here on the drone. Of course I could see it, right? It was about to just completely run in. I'm gonna stop here because there's a car coming. That is a nice car. He's got a nice taste in cars. So that thing came to an immediate stop when it noticed that that sign was there. And the way that it was coming from the sign, like it was on the side where the sign was super thin. Now, if you remember, the previous test that we did was with the Mavic 3 Pro, at least the previous ActiveTrack test, was the Mavic 3 Pro with the 70mm lens. And we suffered a crash. The drone didn't really do a good job at keeping up and tracking us, the Mavic 3 Pro. And I think the real reason behind that is because the field of view is just way too tight, right? Like in a scenario, even here, where we do have some open areas, but there's a lot of trees, that focal length is just too tight. So using the 24mm camera here on the Air 3, I think is going to lend to a much better result because the drone is able to stay closer to us and therefore it's able to avoid obstacles. So, I mean, this is like easy mode for the Air 3. We do have kind of like a canopy of trees overhead, but the drone is staying low enough to avoid those trees and of course keep up. Now the one wheel is not the fastest electric vehicle. I mean, let's see, I think you get like a maximum of 14 miles an hour out of the pine tier. But let's go ahead and spin around. This is usually our spin around point. Let's spin around and see how the drone reacts. So we'll do a sharp little turn, quickly spin, come straight towards the drone. Oh, flies right over us, loses us, spins around, pitches the camera up, picks us back. That was good. That was really good. So basically, when using ActiveTrack, the drone is able to determine and predict the movement that the subject made so that it can pick up and go and retrack the subject that you're looking to go after. Now, if you'll notice here on the bottom of the green box, it has a person icon. That's because, of course, I'm a human being. But if you were to track, say, a boat or a car, it would understand what it's tracking, and it would track and change its flight characteristics accordingly. Now, what's cool about, using ActiveTrack is you can kind of adjust the camera movements here. So I can actually say, hey, I want to continue to have me following at the bottom of the frame. I'm going to just quickly push the altitude up on the drone. Reason being is there is a car coming. But that actually brings us into another reason why I really enjoy ActiveTrack and being able to hold the remote controller is because I just raised my altitude and now the drone is following us from that height. But you'll notice we have some trees coming up here, so I can actually lower my altitude automatically and the drone knows, hey, I want it to follow me from behind at a lower altitude. So being able to make those changes on the fly is really great. But that kind of brings me into what I'm expecting or hoping from a new version of ActiveTrack in the future, right? Is like, give me the ability to completely ditch my remote controller. Give me a beacon, give me something, give me anything, right? We've got a person up here and I would hate for the drone to run into that person. So give me 1 second while we make some changes. Actually, let's see how it does from tracking way high up, way above the trees. Loses me there. Hey, how are you? Anticipated my movement really well and came and picked me back up. So now we're actually tracking from a much higher height. And again, that's why I love ActiveTrack is because you can really make a lot of adjustments as you need to. And the drone just continues to follow. So that was really good. I thought I was gonna have to land the drone to make sure I didn't accidentally have a casualty here. But something I'm looking for, like in a newer version of ActiveTrack, right? We're on 5.0 now, maybe like a 6.0, is come out with a beacon. Let me ditch the remote controller for like true hands-free flying. And also, if you look, like our distance right now is a half a mile away from the home point, right? And typically, if you're gonna be running ActiveTrack, you're gonna launch the drone, you're gonna go miles away, have the drone follow you. I mean, if you're in a car and if you're in the desert, you're gonna be traveling so far away. And then the drone is gonna want to return to home, to that home point, and that could be, of course, be an issue, right? So being able to update the home point automatically would also be great. Like allow the drone to update its home point every, say, 5 seconds. So new home point, little cookie crumb is left, right? Because I wouldn't want the drone to go all the way across the golf course and land where I initially took off from. So we're coming up on about a 10-minute flight here. I will say, super impressed with how the Air 3 has handled things. There's really no surprise here because again, it's ActiveTrack 5, which we've already tried and tested on, the Mavic 3 the Mavic 3 Pro, Mavic 3 Cine. This will be an interesting test up here. We've got the drone up high. We've got some tall trees here. I'm definitely going to be lost in the frame as the drone is higher up. So let's kind of ride to the end of this road and see how it does. I like how even though it's anticipating my route and even though it loses me, it's continuing to keep its flight very fluid. So it doesn't like stop. Whoa! Let's see what it does. Oh boy. All right, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop it because I don't want to lose this drone. Oh, it's like right in the trees. All right, let's see where it's at. Oh man, that's gonna be tough to get out. All right, back up. Back up. I'm gonna have to put it like in the sport mode to help. No, it's good. All right, wow. It is really tucked in there. I'm gonna flip into sport mode, slowly back it out. All right. Of course, we're gonna end on a small little failure like that. Look, it's still anticipating me to be up there. Let's see, is it gonna pick me up if I walk into the frame? Hey, I'm right here. No. All right. So our high level ActiveTrack unfortunately didn't work, but we can pick it back up once we have this car pass by. So that was really impressive that the drone was able to stop itself. And not completely run into the tree. In my first ActiveTrack test with the Mavic 3, I actually lost a Mavic 3 that way. It got stuck up in the tree. So fortunately, we aren't repeating ourselves here. Cool. How about we try a little bit of front tracking? That's how we'll kind of wrap this video up. We'll tell the drone to follow us from the front at a lower altitude and see how it does. That's the one thing I've noticed with ActiveTrack that I think needs a little bit of work is like, if I tell the drone to follow me directly from the left, it'll take a while to get there. Let's see, we'll go and hit front like that and see what it does. So obviously the drone is kind of anticipating my movements and it's saying, hey, the person's following this way, we need to go backwards. So the drone is like right on top of me. Let's see, can I push? I don't know. Now I'm like right underneath of it. Come on. Go a little bit faster. So I'm just gonna really push it and see what it does here. Lost me. Gonna keep, it's still flying backwards, which is funny, but it lost me. Let's try to go out in this open area. So I'm manually flying it right now, by the way. I'm gonna go and try to put it a little bit more out in the open. So now we're out in the open. We'll go ahead, track ourselves, ActiveTrack, go front. Okay, so now it's a little bit further away, and there it goes. See, that's the one thing, is it's like sitting right on top of me. I'd want it to be, just like with ActiveTrack behind me, much further behind. That's actually starting to do a little bit better here. It's just not as snappy as like a Skydio would be. The Skydio is really good, like when I say, hey, I want you to track me from the left, it is on it. Like it gets right over there to the left side. So that little delay can kind of be annoying here. Let's just see, like if I were to say, hey, I want you to track me from behind now, let's see how quickly it would take to make that adjustment. So I click back. Looks like it's making its move around to the side. That was nice. See, now that was nice and smooth. But of course, we're in a much open area here. Okay, so with that, why don't we conclude our ActiveTrack test here with the Air 3. Impressed, of course. We already kind of knew how this would fare because the Mavic 3 Pro did really well, and it pretty much has the same suite of sensors as well as the same version of ActiveTrack. We're kind of getting a little bit mundane here, I think, with ActiveTrack just because it keeps doing so well, right? I'd love to be able to display some new features, like, again, being able to use a beacon or something like that. So DJI, if you're watching, that would be an awesome addition. Now, this drone does have a 70mm lens on it, which we didn't test here in the video, just because the last time I tried 70mm on such a tight area like this, it didn't do so well. But if you guys want to check out that video, I'll leave it linked in the description. That was with the Mavic 3 Pro, but you can pretty much assume that there's going to be similar characteristics and capabilities between the Air 3 and Mavic 3 just because they're so similar. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below about the Air 3 and ActiveTrack 5.0. And as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.